What is up, guys? Thank you guys so much for checking out the show. I hope you have had a fantastic week. As always, today we are going to be covering the fallout from All Out, essentially, is what I'm going to kind of call it here today. As always, thank you guys so much again for checking out the show, whether you're watching on YouTube now, which is pretty cool. We're hoping to uh, do that a little bit more frequently, at least maybe once a week, maybe up that depending on how things go. But yeah, it's pretty cool, and I appreciate the feedback so far. And you guys should check out the show. I really just started this, not really knowing what to expect and knowing what I wanted to do with it, and just kind of using it as a platform just to kind of talk shit, and get my shit and my side out of things, and just kind of as a venting platform, right, for all things wrestling, at least. So that was the original intent for the pod, and just kind of going from there. But again, thank you guys so much for checking it out. You can follow the show on Twitter at kickashpodcast_. You can follow me on Twitter at ASHMANNS. But with all that bullshit out of the way, we will get into the nitty gritty here from, again, the fallout from All Out, essentially, in the week that has been in AEW world. Of course, the events that transpired on Dynamite following the media scrum, the vacant championships that we had, one that we still have, which we have a tournament for, which will be culminating at Grand Slam, which will be probably a very, very eventful and newsworthy show in its own right, which we'll obviously get into a little bit later. But for this show, we're going to kind of pick up where we left off, at least, and that's the AEW Media Scrum, kind of recap and kind of come for full circle, rather, with the new developments, the suspensions, the injuries, the biting, all that bullshit. So with that being said, we're gonna get right into the show because there's a lot to cover, and I don't want to keep you guys here too long, but there's so much that obviously we need to kind of just cover, right, and do due diligence on, and go from there. But and it's not all negative too, and it sucks for me personally, just kind of getting like my emotions out of it, out of the way, rather. It sucks because like AEW, or All Out, rather, AEW All Out, was a good show. It was a very good pay-per-view, and I think that it sucks that the focus and the hype, like I mentioned in the other show, isn't on the pay-per-view itself and the wrestling itself, and MJF being back, and the feud that we could have had for between him and Punk, and being the Joker, and that whole direction and the story, and the thought, right? And I really, it sucks that we're not going to see how the Joker and the return of the MJF storyline was going to play out, and just like the promos and the direction and the ideas that both sides had. And obviously MJF had, he's been out 3 months or so, so he's been silent for a reason, right? All of this was culminating to All Out with the voicemail and everything that played a part into it. So it just sucks that we're not going to be able to see that, and obviously MJF is going to move forward, and he's still going to be focusing on the heavyweight championship itself. But it just sucks that it's going to be against Punk, because that would have been a nice bow to that chapter and to that story, and then to see MJF just kind of grow and then be the face of AEW going forward. But with that being said, we're going to get into the CM Punk side of things first, and the Ace Steel side of things, and kind of just go over their portion of the events, rather, and their side of the story. Again, this isn't specifically from Punk, which just someone in their camp, rather. But all of the articles that I'm going to be referencing is from WrestlePeers.com, which they got their information, it looks like, from Fightful Select and from Wrestling Observer. So shout out to all those guys and gals involved in the websites. So I appreciate you guys. Excuse me. But with that being said, we're going to dive right into it. And pick up from the media scrum. So with the last show that we left off on, we had the crazy shit. CM Punk was spewing with Tony Khan sitting right there, and I've seen a lot of people kind of reference and call out Tony Khan for not addressing it. With him being right there, obviously, and it's kind of one of those things. It's like, I don't know. I can't necessarily play arm. Like, I can't really go back and say in 2020 hindsight, right? Like, oh, I would have done this and this. I like to think I would have done certain things, right? But I don't know. You know what I mean? And to me, my perception and my judgment of Tony Khan, as obviously with not knowing him, I met him that one time at the dark taping for a picture, which was really cool. So between that interacting, seeing him before and after the shows, and just seeing the passion and from other interviews, obviously it kind of goes without saying, like, the dude loves the business. He loves AEW. He put in everything. Well, not everything, but he put in a lot to AEW, and he took a chance with AEW. And I think he himself too is probably, I don't want to say a people pleaser because that has a negative connotation to it, but he's one of those people probably in life, it seems like, who just wants to make everyone happy, right? And who wants to cause the less turmoil and the less conflict, which is kind of ironic with everything that happened at the scrum. But he doesn't want to be the bad guy, right? Like, he doesn't want to be the guy to cause any conflict or have to hurt anyone's feelings. But at the same token, too, like, you're the owner of the company, right? Like, you are the end all be all. You say you have all these titles. You say you are the Vince McMahon of AEW, which obviously he is. So in that situation, it sucks. Like, you're torn between your star, essentially, like, your star quarterback, right? Your star point guard, your star athlete, you're the individual, the athlete who's representing your brand, your champion, who just came out of this hard fought battle, who has blood everywhere, he's sweating, and he's in his hometown, right? He should be living and vibing in that moment and celebrating, eating his fucking pastries, bakery items, whatever the fuck they were. They were muffins, they were cupcakes, they were brownies, depending on who you listen to, whatever the fuck they were. Just shout out to Mindy. I think that was the name of the bakery in Chicago. But yeah, so with all that being said, I'm not gonna say like, oh, if I was Tony Khan, I would have done this or he should have done this. Ideally, in an ideal world, yeah, like, if he knew what was gonna happen, I'm sure he would have taken the mic way sooner. Or if he knew how it was gonna transcend or transpire, rather, I think he obviously would have taken the mic way sooner. Should he have? There's also reports too that he had an idea of what Punk was going to say, or at least he was going to put an end to the whole Colt Cabana side of things. And Tony Khan was okay with it. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I'm not gonna speculate one way or another because that can lead to a whole other thing. And like I said, there's obviously an investigation going on too. So we'll probably get more information as it comes out. We obviously, or not obviously, but we may not rather get specific information or all of the information we want. But I think the bullet points and the main things that we need to know, or that we want to know, we'll probably get, sadly. But again, the Tony Khan portion side of things out of the way, we'll get into the CM Punk side and the fallout from him picking up the remaining box of pastry items that he had. I think he left all his seltzers out there. He did. He left all his seltzer cans out there. And I think Leva Bates, there was someone I mentioned, I forget where I heard it from, that she handed out the remaining cans that he had up there to the reporter. So shout out to her. That was very kind. Very kind. I'm sure they probably needed something to drink, to say the least. But going back to the article here again with the CM Punk side of things, Fightful Select has now provided an update rather on the situation, detailing Punk and Steele's version of events as per sources close to the deal. According to the report, the Elite allegedly kicked down CM Punk's locker room door, a far more hostile approach as opposed to the reports that the Elite were simply waiting for Punk in his locker room after the press conference. I'll say this and I'll get to what I have to say there. Per the Punk Steele side of things, after the scrum, the Young Bucks approached Punk's locker room door, and Punk wasn't entering the door after having been in a long match, bloodied, and finished with an emotional scrum. The Bucks are said to have pounded on the door with claims that they, quote, kicked the door down, end quote. To that, regardless, I mean, I guess it does, obviously does have a big play. If you're sitting in your locker room and these three guys kick your door down and you're not expecting it, then yeah, I can see you reacting if you're Punk with punches flying. Regardless how they entered the room, whether they kicked down the door, whether they were waiting in there already for him, whether the door was still open and they just casually walked up, like, like APA's door back in the day. Regardless of how they approached it, I guess you, being Punk, you can't be surprised. And like I've said before, you guys know I'm a big CM Punk fan, so get that out of the way. But again, right is right and wrong is wrong, and at least my opinion, like, you specifically called out these dudes. Like, you didn't say like their specific names, but you said EVPs, and there's 3 EVPs, right? So it's obvious who you're talking about. So you can't be taken aback or pissed off or surprised that these dudes are going to approach you. Like, it doesn't matter. Again, I guess it does matter to effect, because again, like, if they just break down your door and barge in that way, then yeah, you're gonna react one way as opposed to if they just politely knock on your door and wait for you to open the door, right? So I guess that does have, some play in the reaction of Punk, I guess I should say, but so I guess I'll kind of classify it as that. His reaction to however they came into the locker room is one category, right? But the fact that they approached you, dude, and that they came to you regardless is you can't be mad by that. Like you told them to. You specifically said in the scrum in your rant, if you have a problem, essentially come find me. So they did, you know what I mean? So after that, is another thing, but like my opinion is you can't be surprised or pissed off that these dudes that you essentially just obliterated out there came and approached you on it. So that I don't feel sorry for him at all about. Now, if they kicked down the door and barged in that way and came guns ablazing that, in that regard, that's one thing. If they were already in the locker room by the time CM Punk got to his locker room and then Punk was walking in and then that's how things transpired, that's another reaction. If Punk was already in his locker room, they're knocking on the door and whatever, however the door opened, that's a third reaction, right? So I think that is its own clusterfuck in and of itself. But the fact that they approach him, I don't think should even be a question, in my opinion. Continuing on in regards to Ace Steel alleged biting and chair throwing, sources close to the producer stated that Steele's wife was present in the locker room at the time, leading to Steele going ballistic, throwing chairs, and ultimately biting someone, which we found out was Kenny Omega. Fightful noted that the claim made from sources close to Steele were that he was simply looking out for his wife more than anything, although things eventually got out of hand. No shit. The report then notes that the fight was supposedly a very long altercation and that the talk back and forth did not stop after the brawl. Additionally, Fightful moved to dispel rumors that Punk had injured his triceps during the brawl, instead reporting that those close to him believed the injury transpired during his AEW Championship match with Jon Moxley, which it did. Fightful reported specifically, quote, the rumors that CM Punk had injured his triceps during the fracas. However, those near him say that it happened during a dive that many noticed during the AEW All Out main event. He could be seen icing it after the match during the scrum. We haven't been told of any severity, but we're told Punk was hurt going into the backstage fight, which we have later found out what the injury was and that he had surgery, which I'll kind of get into here in a second. They close out the article saying Fightful then addressed the rumors circulating, stating that both Punk and Steele are done with the company, reporting that those close to the pair say that they haven't been informed of that as of yet. Per the report, virtually all, quote-unquote, of the AEW roster that Fightful have spoken to about the situation believe that Punk and Steele will need to make heavy amends should they be sticking around, with heat on the pair said to be unreal. As pointed out within Fightful's report, this is simply one side of the story, with numerous names involving refraining from commenting due to potential for illegal action to be taken. Which, I think that kind of negates any other conspiracy theories that this could be a work. And I was one of those from the beginning as well. I was kind of wondering or holding back with everything before knowing 100% if this is real. And it obviously kind of it's in my mind kind of transparent at this point and shows that it is, especially with the biting, which didn't even come from the dog. It came from a human grown-ass man. So with the biting though, with the placement of the bite is huge for me, right? So if Kenny was bit on the arm, for instance, right, and it was like something like that, hit the mic. If it was something like he was in a chokehold or something like that, or if he was being refrained, right, and Steele and Omega had his arm around Steele rather in that type of manner, you would bite someone, right, to get them off of you or do whatever you could. So it depends to me on where the bite on Omega was, which is crazy. And I don't know why. For me, I'm honing so much in on the bite, but I think the fact that first of all there was a bite involved and it wasn't from the dog is just kind of comical. And shout out to Kenny because I think it's kind of a consensus and an agreed upon thing that Kenny Omega was going in there to save Larry because Larry was going nuts in the corner. So shout out to Omega, and I don't doubt that at all. I personally find that very, very likely that Kenny Omega, while all this bullshit is happening, I can just picture Kenny Omega going into the corner and trying to retrieve Larry the dog and whisk him off to safety. And then just all the bullshit transpiring from there. But that is the Punk Steel side of things. After that, we will get into the Elite side of the Oh man, I just pulled the article back up. It sucks, man, seeing the only picture that they have of the trios championships. Ironically, it looks like in backstage in their locker room. Just sucks. It just sucks, like the fact they weren't referenced on Dynamite, the fact that we had to crown new champions on Dynamite already. But again, shout out to Pac. I love that he's the first two-time AEW title holder in the company. Um, it's or simultaneous rather. So that's cool, and I'm happy for them and that triangle. But I don't. It sucks, man. And again, that's what I was saying kind of towards the beginning. It just sucks, like the emotional side of it for me. Like it's sad that all this focus and the show that we're sitting here doing is focused on all this bullshit, right? It should be focused on the positivity, which I'll get to. But we had to get all this bullshit and at least dress it and get it out of the way, right? You can't ignore it at this point. But again, with the Elite side of things, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega side of the story in the backstage fight that took place following CM Punk's have finally been revealed. The Young Bucks, first we'll start with addressing the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Brandon Cutler, Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, and Michael Nakazawa have all been suspended, and CM Punk and Ace Steel could be on their way out of the company or added to the list of suspensions following the events that have taken place, with the reported third-party investigation looking into the issue. Punk and Steele's reported side of the story has been revealed by Fightful Select, which we just went over. So now we'll get into the Elite side. Excuse me. The report states that sources close to the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega side revealed that the Young Bucks went to talk to Punk in his locker room, but didn't burst in as aggressive as suggested by the other side. The claim was that they opened the door, not kicking it in as claimed by the other side, and before Matt Jackson could say anything, Punk had went off and started throwing sucker punches at Matt's head. Nick went to intervene, and Steel allegedly threw a chair and hit Nick in the face. The report also states that from the Elite side of the story, Kenny Omega's involvement, including trying to make sure CM Punk's dog, Larry, was taken out of harm's way, on top of trying to split up the fight, but resulted rather in Omega's hair being pulled and him being bit by Ace Steel. Fucking wild. And just finishing up the article here, there's still yet to be any official announcement made by AEW about what the happening is with the personnel involved with the backstage fight, other than CM Punk's world title and the Elite Trios titles have been vacated. And like I just mentioned, we have actually crowned new Trios champions, again, that being Death Triangle, which is a fantastic follow-up. Again, it's sad with reference this really quick. Shout out to Malachi Black. And we don't really know exactly what's going on. If it's it just seems to be a personal matter, rather. You know what I mean? So, shout out to him. I hope he's doing okay. I hope he takes the time that he needs. And yeah, I just wish him nothing but the best. I don't wish him a speedy recovery, as I like to say. I just wish him a good recovery because speedy can not necessarily result in the best thing. Take the time that you need, depending on what the situation is. But I say that because there have been reports that he was granted his conditional release by AEW, which we don't specifically know what that fully entails yet. That could just be, or what it sounds like rather, is him having exactly what it sounds like, a conditional release. He's not obligated to show up on TV or actually, perform or anything like that, but he's not allowed to show up with or sign or make appearances with any other wrestling promotion that's, from what I heard, nationally televised. So obviously WWE. But I don't know what that means for any like independent promotions because it's apparent that AEW gives their wrestlers more freedom to wrestle independent shows and other shows, depending on the promotion. So don't really know the specifics on that yet, but the reports that have come out have pretty much confirmed that he's been granted, and the roster has kind of been made or led to kind of be under that assumption that he's been granted his temporary or conditional rather release. So again, just hope he's doing okay. Him as a human being, wrestling will always be here. So just shoot out. Kudos and shout out to him and just wish you all the best, man. But I say that because it would have been cool to see the House of Black been the follow-up champions to kind of take the trios titles and it just make a fucking just like see what kind of story they would have done, right? And blaze a trail is what I was gonna say. Just and really become dominant champions and just set the scene, right? And really set a good foundation for what those titles should mean. But again, I'm big fans of the Death Triangle, and I think they're a good, I don't want to say follow up, but a good trio to put the titles on. So With that being said, excuse me, we will reference and kind of follow up on the reported injury to CM Punk that he did sustain during the match with Jon Moxley during the dive. Um, they go on, Russell Pierce again, shout out to them, go on to report Punk had hit a dive to the outside on Moxley, and as Punk got back to his feet, you could see him having a little discomfort with his elbow. At the time, some fans did notice Punk constantly reaching for his arm throughout the match, which was very noticeable, and some just assumed he was selling. But I noticed that during the match and then during the scrum as well, when he was putting the cans behind his pretty much like right above his elbow and on the back of his arm, you just knew something wasn't right. You know what I mean? So you're just obviously hoping the best and just banged up, but it didn't end up becoming just that minor of an injury. But we did get a report and an update from, looks like, Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio. Dave confirmed reports that CM Punk's injuries that he suffered during his match is serious and he potentially could be out for up to 8 months. There's a quote from Dave himself saying, quote, he may have already undergone surgery, which it was reported that he did. But either way, he's undergoing surgery and it was not confirmed to me. It was a torn tricep, which it later reported was, but it was confirmed to me that it's surgery for a torn muscle. This is so weird, worded so weirdly. So it's triceps, bicep, maybe pec, but probably triceps, and that's usually about an 8-month recovery period. So he's going to be stripped of the title either way. So that move is pretty easy to do. He also noted when CM Punk is healthy to come back and isn't fired, that there will be some people who will not want to have him back. Punk's out for 8 months or whatever it will be, 6-8 months, whatever, if he's not let go, and a lot of people don't want him back, end quote. There's a lot with the injury, right? And first of all, the injury itself is shitty, and again, wish him nothing but the best. He's probably more pissed off than anything with the injury itself, because you heard his comments from the foot injury, right? And he said that was one, if not one of the worst injury he has had in his career. And he more so referenced because he was very limited in his mobility, obviously, right? When you have a foot injury, it's, you're limited in what you can do. And he was upset with not being able to walk Larry and things like that, which I totally get. Your arm, tricep, whatever type of arm injury it is, tricep, bicep, pec, whatever, that sucks too. Like that, it's amazing the simple tasks that we do in everyday life, that shit like that and an injury like that and a recovery like that, just take for granted, and a lot of infringement and impairment on just convenience, right? Just like I said, a lot of things you take for granted. So that sucks for him as a human being, first of all. Second of all, it sucks for the company. He's obviously going to be out for at least 6 to 8 months, which sucks. He was just out. We just went through this whole interim championship. That was literally the whole point of the match, or his rematch at the All Out pay-per-view, was because of the fallout from the interim championship debacle. So that sucks. Storyline and just wrestling line rise, right? Like it's just, and that completely just dumps a huge, just ice bucket of water on the flame that was MJF. So that is so fucking unfortunate in that regard and in that vein. And then too, with the legality and the real life nature of everything that happened after the scrum, the whatever potential investigation, or the results rather, from the investigation unveil, I don't know. I'm not in HR, but I don't know. You can't just suspend or fire someone when they're injured. You know what I mean? Like there's laws against that. I don't know how their contracts are worked. We've heard in the past with other contracts, right? Like if you're, for instance, like if you're out on injury for 8 months, those 8 months are added to your contract. So if that's the case and you can't be suspended while you're injured specifically or fired, he could be out on injury for that whatever time frame. Once he's, quote, he would have been released to come back, then that's when the suspension can start. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know their contracts. I would love to read the contracts, just curiosity, right? I don't even need numbers. I would just love to know how it's worded and just the layout. And for instance, does AEW have a non-compete clause at the end of it, like a 90-day, 60-day, 30-day non-compete clause? Or if you're fired on Sunday or you quit on Sunday, whatever, and you're released from your contract, can you show up on Monday Night Raw the next day? You know what I mean? So just me, curiosity. Not that it's none of my business. I would just love to know, right? And just love to find out. But the Punk injury causes a lot of or rather it just opens up a lot more questions and prolongs a lot of progression in a lot of different ways. So I think that's going to be a key thing looking forward, or going forward rather, to see how that plays out and to see what is prohibited because of his injury. So I don't know, guys. I don't know. There was another article that was released a couple days ago as well, or maybe yesterday rather, that MJF is reportedly involved in the investigation into the backstage fight. Um, and I'll just, again, this is from Wrestling Purist as well. The fight backstage between Punk, Steel, Omega, Young Bucks, and more after All Out has been the biggest story, obviously. Now it appears MJF will be involved in the investigation into the situation. The events following All Out going off the air have been messy to say the least. Blah, blah, blah. The company is taking this very seriously and have brought in an independent company to investigate what happened. This will involve conducting interviews with everyone involved, and Dave Meltzer has revealed in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that this also includes anyone who may have witnessed what went down. Interestingly, this includes MJF, which is very interesting. Which kind of makes sense though, because he was obviously there towards the end of the pay-per-view. So I get with him making his big return and being away for so long, and I can see him not really wanting to leave so soon. So kind of does make sense in a way. Quote, the company has brought in an independent firm to investigate and do interviews with everyone in the room, which included all the names mentioned above, as well as many others, including a number of neutral parties who were in the room and were believed to have seen everything as it happened. The key names that would have included were Max Friedman and AEW and Jacksonville Jaguars Chief Legal Officer Mega Parek. I'm sorry, I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name. I've heard it a couple of times, I just can't recall. They continued saying, until the investigation is completed, those involved in the fracas were suspended. All long-term decisions regarding anything to do with any of them are pending until completion of the investigation. There still could be outside legal proceedings regarding the fight from different sides. I don't expect AEW to ever address the specifics of what happened. Depending on the timing or threats of legal action, we don't know if the key parties will talk. It is believed some want to talk and tell their side of the story when they can. And again, that was the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And I read that from WrestlePurist.com. So shout out to them. And see if there's anything else. Yeah. They just kind of wrap it up here with saying it's unclear how long the investigation will go on or what will eventually happen to those involved. CM Punk will be out of action with an injury for around 8 months, so he won't be on TV until mid-2023. It's kind of crazy to think what has unfolded in a year. Because Punk, we just kind of celebrated his 1 year with AEW, right? And or at least acknowledged that milestone. And to think that a year ago we were going into Grand Slam and it was, I don't know, just like the excitement was completely different. And I actually was thinking back on it. So I put up the card from last year's AEW Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe Stadium, and just think about the difference between last year and this year, right? Last year it was on September 22nd. I think this year it's going to be on September 21st. So damn year to the day, a year. The card itself was Thunder Rosa defeating Kayla Sparks. Paul White defeated Ricky Shane Page, CPA, and VSK. I don't even remember that match. The Dark Order, which was Alex Reynolds, John Silver, Preston Tim Vance, and Alan Angels, defeated Dean Alexander, Kevin Tibbs, TJ Crawford, and Eric James. Kenny Omega with Don Callis and Bryan Danielson wrestled to a time limit draw. Insane to think that was a year ago. MJF with Wardlow defeated Brian Pillman Jr. with Julia Hart by submission. Malachi Black defeated Cody Rhodes with Arn Anderson and Brandy Rhodes in his corner. Sting and Darby Allin defeated FTR with Tully Blanchard by submission, which I don't even remember that, which I'm very intrigued to go back and watch, because by submission, like I have to go back and see that. Completely, that just escaped my memory. And then the main event, of course, was Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, who was the champion at the time, with Jamie Hayter and Rebel at her side defeating Ruby Soho by submission. And the rampage that followed was CM Punk defeating Powerhouse Hobbs with Hook in his corner, the Super Click, Adam Cole and the Young Bucks, with Doc Gallows and Brandon Cutler defeating Christian Cage and Jurassic Express, with Marco Stunt, who was still there as well. Men of the Year, Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page with Dan Lambert defeated the Inner Circle, Chris Jericho and Jake Hager. The The Lucha Brothers, Penta El Zero Mero, and Rey Fenix and Santana and Ortiz defeated the Hardy Family Office. Wow. God, I mean, I didn't forget about them, but man, like, I'm happy that was disbanded. The Hardy Family Office, which was Private Party, the Butcher and the Blade, or I'm sorry, the Lucha Brothers defeated the Hardy Family Office. Penelope Ford defeated Anna Jay, and John Moxley and Eddie Kingston in the main event defeated Minoru Suzuki and Lance Archer. Just thinking about that card last year and the excitement going into it and the build, and thinking where we're at now, it's just sad, and that's why I keep going back to the sadness. And again, that's just, I could be completely off. You guys could think like, or you guys may think that this is fucking great, this is exciting, this is best for their business, this is getting huge like ratings for them, which it is. The name is out there. I think this was their third week in a row, hitting over 1 million. But I think, and correct me guys if I'm wrong, but I think the show in the opening segment topped with like 1.0 or like one. It was over 1 million, right? 1.035 or something like that. And then after, I think the first half hour, or after essentially like the opening part of the show, they lost a lot of viewers, and that's sad because we're going into Grand Slam, and it should be a whole bunch of excitement. And I think going forward, and that's why I kind of wanted to do this show today and just focus on all this bullshit rather, and just get it wrapped up and done with, because I'm ready to be I'm ready to have it in the rearview mirror. I'm ready to stop talking about it, to be done listening to just all of the negativity on it. And yeah, it's fascinating, right? Like it's fascinating for all the wrong reasons, right? But with that being said, I it's a scary time in the sense that we don't really know what this means for, like, if you're a CM Punk fan, and if this was the end of him in the EW completely, if this was the end of his wrestling career, if we witnessed his last match, I'm pretty certain we'll probably never see him as the EW World Champion again. It's just, for whatever reason, he just seems to be cursed. And I don't really know how I feel. I'm kind of still holding out complete judgment in my complete opinion, one way or another, on whether I want Punk to come back, which is crazy. Like, if you would have asked me a year ago, like while I was in Chicago, like if a year from then, if I would be questioning on whether I want CM Punk to come back from an injury, or just come back in period with AEW, I would have been like, what the fuck happened? And definitely not have expected this. So with that being said, and the other thought that I had too, before I kind of wrap things up with all of this, is just the fact that there were so many opportunities and just so much time from the initial Hangman Page promo. And yes, I know CM Punk was out injured, but apparently they had a few staff meetings or whatever. Like, there's so much time to address it. Why the first promo in the ring, right? And then why use the media scrum as a way to just unleash all this venom, right? And I understand being frustrated. Like I said in the other show, like I totally get being fucking just fed up with being accused of something and blamed for something that you had no involvement in, if that's the case, and just wanted to be done with something and wanted to clear your name. Totally get it, right? Any of us would want to. But the fact that it took a sharp turn and went a whole different direction, is just kind of leaves me neutral right now. Just kind of leaves me just like, I don't really know what's going on, but I wish we could just kind of get to the resolution of this, get the facts out, and just be done with it. You know what I mean? And move on and focus on the exciting thing. That is, MJF is back. We're getting this awesome tournament, another tournament. We crowned, like I said earlier, new trios champions, which is very cool. The tournament that we have leading into Grand Slam, pull it up here really quick. The updated tournament that we have since Rampage, we have Sammy Guevara next week facing off against Jon Moxley. We have Chris Jericho facing off against Bryan Danielson, I believe. Yeah, against Bryan Danielson, which is going to be fucking fantastic. And then we'll obviously have the winner from those two matches facing off in the finals, which will be at Grand Slam on September 21st. If I'm making an early prediction, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go to Danielson versus Moxley, just because that, I think, is a more likely and a more believable finals match, and you can see it really going 50-50 either way. I think Moxley and Jericho, I think you'd be more leaning towards the assumption that Moxley was going to win, even though storyline wise, that would make more sense with like the JAS going against the BCC and all that. So I don't know, but I think it would be a fun rematch to have Danielson and Moxley again. Obviously, a rematch from their Revolution match, which was fantastic. But yeah, I don't know. I'm torn. I don't think we're gonna get an upset with Sammy Guevara here. I don't see that. I think we're gonna get Moxley to the finals, but I'm holding off until I get an actual picture of the finals. Whether I'm gonna predict Moxley winning, because something about him wanting to take that vacation just makes me feel like he may want to actually take that vacation, and he's just back for a couple weeks, and then after the finals, he's gonna take his rightfully owed and deserved time off. So just kind of an update on that title tournament and where we're at for the World Championship in AEW. But guys, what a show! What a week in AEW! What a week in the wrestling world! It's crazy that this summer we have had so many monumental and just I think monumental is the proper word, just monumental shifts in the wrestling world between Vince McMahon no longer in power, Triple H taking over creative, all the bullshit happening with AEW. And I say bullshit just because that's this week, right? But I have faith. You know what I mean? I have faith going forward. I have faith in Tony Khan. I have faith in the management team that he has, and that's all we can do, right? That's all we can do is keep hope and keep faith. I just, for what it's worth, I think Tony Khan has too much passion for AEW and too much passion for this business to let something like this be the end all for the company. First of all, and I don't think we're even at that point. I don't think that's in jeopardy or anything like that. So for people saying that, like, oh, this is the end of AEW, like, I think that's kind of drastic. My opinion. I don't think we're there. Has this been a big blow? Fuck yeah. Do I think we're probably going to get some change in the structure? Maybe certain titles, maybe, but that's until we know for certain what actually happened. I'm not comfortable saying, oh yeah, this should actually happen. And again, we even if we know X, Y, and Z transpired, we still aren't there on a day-to-day basis. So we all just sit here and all just have our own takes, our own opinions of everything. But it's fun. At the end of the day, it's fun to kind of speculate. Again, if you wish it was more of the wrestling side of things, but at the end of the day, it's the crazy world of wrestling, right? It's the world that we love. But I do want to end on I guess it's a good note. Not as many buys as I'm sure he was hoping for, but we did get the numbers in for the initial purchases and satellite streams and buys for All Out from this year. And it has been reported again from Russell Purist via Wrestling Observer newsletter. It shows, quote, for the most important pay-per-view number, we have less info at this point than usual, but based on US cable/satellite numbers and comparisons with the last two shows would give us a number between 135,000 and 142,000. So that's pay-per-view buys for All Out. Obviously, that doesn't top last year's buys, which was at 205, but that's obvious, to be. I don't think anyone should have expected it to top last year. Last year was CM Punk's first match back in 7 years. So, I mean, let's just be realistic, right? But yeah, guys, with that being said, it has been a crazy, crazy week in the world of AEW. I'm very hopeful and very much excited, looking forward to the future. I'm very happy. It seems we may have gotten past all this bullshit and at least have it in the rearview mirror. I'm sure we're going to continue talking about it at some point, but hopefully not to this length and to not, or to this extreme rather. But thank you guys again so much for checking out the show. I hope you like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff, and just leave feedback. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for checking out the show. Take care.